I'm Andrew Johnson. Today, I wanted to discuss my experience in media so far. And before I get into this, I just want to say that this is my experience, my perspectives, and opinions. So before I start getting on a tangent here, I just want viewers to be mindful of that perhaps something I'm talking about may not have been, maybe you wouldn't have felt any way about it, but I'm going to tell you the story from my view. So I've been asked about this subject before, and I've talked about so many things on my YouTube channel. I've talked about pretty much every year except for the years 2016 to 2019. I have not shared a lot about those years, and I felt like now is the time to do it. Really what I want to answer here is, how did I go from basically an A student on the dean's list to somebody who was really questioning whether or not I should be doing any of this at all? How did I go from this person that people think is so skilled and talented to somebody that struggled to get his foot in the door of the industry that I studied? I think that I'm in a unique position to talk about this. I doubt that my former colleagues will discuss any of this publicly, and I doubt that they'll watch this at all, because they're just trying to survive in the media industry. So there's a whole culture there that they're in, and I think they would be too scared to do what I'm about to do, which is not telling you everything, but I am sharing information publicly that I wish there was somebody that told me some of this information about media before I studied it and really worked to get into the industry. I wish there was somebody there for me to just be really real about this. I think that in order to make sense out of what I'm going to say, I'm going out on a limb here because I doubt very many people will really understand my experience here and where I'm coming from. In order to understand it, I want to take you through the years I was in college in a bit more detail, also talking about how things have been since and what things are like in the industry. And I think it's really important to start back at the beginning to make any sense of this. I could talk about how things were or are post-graduation and landing the first gig and starting from there, but I want to tell you a story. I want to take you through and tell you the truth of my experience. And okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on 2016 because, what I did, excuse me 1 second. Let me get something out of the way first. Okay, so these are the physical receipts. Okay, this is a very expensive receipt. General Arts and Science for 1 year. So this was Media and Communications that I completed 2016 to 2017. Okay, I'm doing this because we live in an era where people don't know what's real, what's fake. So, just because I say I took media, it doesn't mean a blessed thing. Or just because I said I have a job, it doesn't really mean anything. Just because I have it written down somewhere, I went to school, it doesn't actually mean that that's the truth. So, and this one is a really expensive receipt as well. Broadcasting, television, Andrew Johnson. So I do have a pulse and I can breathe and I have a brain. So the thing about media and communications is, and this is something that I have mulled over in my mind, I've thought about it many times. There was an option in 2017 where I could have completed the media and communications 1 year And then I could have gone into a 2-year set of courses, and I would have got a diploma from that as well. So I could have done that, graduated 2018, and I don't think that it really would have changed my life all that much. My YouTube channel wouldn't be what it is today. I made a decision to not take the 2-year from Media and Communications, General Arts and Science. I wanted to prove myself, not only to myself, but to other people who doubted me. I did 2 years of college after that in one of the most intensive, stressful programs that's out there. Media is not for the faint of heart. So I'm the last person actually that you would think would do something like that. My motivation, I think, was a little off in a sense, because it was more about what other people thought as opposed to what I really wanted. But it was a fated decision because I have always been very interested in television and film, things like voiceover and music and theater and everything. It just made sense to me at the time. Especially going back as a mature student, I was more prepared to take on the assignments and tests and everything. And I think because many years prior, my acting college program didn't work as planned, so it just made sense. But it was also one of these decisions that I don't know if it was really necessary. It was like, would it have made any difference at all had I been there or not? You know, I don't know. I can't say it was all wasted. I think it was great that I had access to equipment that I'll never see again. I'll never see expensive cameras and lighting and sets and even some of the software I had access to, and so much more that, you know, I will never see that again in my lifetime, probably. So I had the opportunity to do it. I went ahead and I did it. So you know, coming out of media and communications, going into first semester of TV broadcasting, I think that I was a little arrogant in a way, because I was also coming into it thinking, you know, I can do something good in the industry. I can be somebody that brings some type of change, which was really, well, it was not only that it was arrogant, but it was naive. As I'll go through this, you'll see how media is not really gonna change. In some ways, it is the way it is. I just wish that actually somebody had told me before I went in that, you know what, Andrew, marginalized people really shouldn't be taking this course. And I'm not going to go into a lot of specification right now. Let me just say, TV people, the culture of media in Canada and arguably in other places around the world, they look for a very specific profile and personality that I am not. Okay, so I wish somebody had told me that before I did another 2 years of college. Anyhow, so let's look at the fall 2017. Let me just say, actually, before I go ahead, what I'm not going to do is tell you everything about what TV broadcasting teaches. I'll say a little bit here, but I'm not here trying to do marketing for the program. I'm just talking about my experience. So these are things that, you know, as a viewer, I think that my viewership is very smart. If you want to know more information, I'm sure you have the skills and the ability to look up more specifics, but I can say TV broadcasting basically, and it did teach me the fundamentals of television. And that includes editing, writing, setting up your cameras, really in depth on the cameras, the lighting, 3-point lighting, sometimes 5-point lighting. We're talking post-production, we're talking news writing. It was a little bit of everything, short films, documentaries, music videos, we learned a little bit of social media, remote broadcasts. It was really a general look at everything to set up students so they could be workers in the industry. And our teachers, so before I have to do some more preamble here, sorry. Our teachers, in my opinion, there's little distinction between workers in the industry and who our teachers were, because our teachers were industry professionals, people that, they'd worked on the Olympics, they'd won Emmys, they work at the local news station. These are folks that had worked on cooking television shows, people that had written for cartoons and stuff that you might remember from growing up. These were real industry people. When I'm talking here, it's not just like when I start getting into this more, when I say my teachers, it's not like, oh, that's just somebody teaching a television course. These are actually people that worked or still work in the industry. So first semester, 2017, I can't really, I was just getting a feel for stuff. Throughout the whole first year, I can't really say there was really much to talk about because I was doing really well. I was getting good grades, and I really put my heart and soul into my work. And even during the strike, which I don't need to spend too much time talking about the strike of 2017, but I was one of the students that I was continuing to go to the college, and that was even the birth of my character Disco Drew, that I later made a short film that was basically an improvement upon sort of a similar format I did in media and communications with a Michael Jackson character that I no longer feel like doing. So even though acting and music that I like to do and all of that wasn't part of the program, I wanted to bring as much of my talents and skills as possible. It's, what am I going to do with, the whole acting thing didn't work out in my life, but I still wanted to use it. And this was still opportunity to be on-camera talent, but this is a technical program, so it really didn't matter if I was doing costumes and makeup and writing and song and dance. That's great, Andrew, but that's not what we were graded on. So, really throughout the first year, it's a wonderful story. And, this is the part where anyone watching this, you want to hop off now before I get into the darker parts of this story. But I was sailing through pretty much. This was a good time in my life. It was stressful, meeting project deadlines, the early mornings that continued throughout second year as well. Early mornings, late nights. I'm talking a very intensive program, but I did it. I think by the end of first year, I started to see that maybe I wasn't really as liked as much by my classmates as I thought I might have been. This was my own doing, where I think my classmates at that time, we did a lot of group work. And I think that, my singing and dancing and the characters and stuff, a lot of that was appreciated to a point. Not that anyone thanked me for any of that, for providing a lot of content for stuff that would be shot and edited, which is fine, neither here nor there. I think what started to make cracks in some of the group dynamics was my own desire to not only have all this character work and song and dance, but then I would open up about all this serious stuff like what I'm doing now. You can see on this channel that in 2018 I did a news story, talking openly about my eating disorder in my past. that was a whole full circle moment for me. I think that was one of the best things I did in TV broadcasting. But I think what I did was sort of create sort of this difficulty for my classmates to really understand me, because it's like some days I'm presenting Disco Drew and it's fun and dancing and we're having a good time. And then, the next presentation, he's talking about all of this really sad stuff. I think that if I had just kind of stuck to, for lack of a better way to say it, but if I stuck to less depth and less personal stuff about myself, I probably would have been invited out a bit more, I probably would have made more connections, because I think that might have been some of the stuff that began to deteriorate some of the relationships I thought I had built there. This is the thing about TV people, even at the educational level. These are folks that they say, I'm your friend and I love you and this is great and stuff. And it took me a long time to realize that most of them, pretty much all of them, they're not my friends. And that's the harsh truth. And I think even as early as summer 2018, just before second year started in TV broadcasting, I started having doubts whether or not these other students were my friend or not. But we worked so closely together that I guess you start thinking that maybe we're supposed to be more involved in each other's lives or something, but no, it's pretty much they were there for the projects, and that was pretty much that. So that's pretty much it for the first year. There wasn't really a lot of drama that I remember. It's like there's not a lot that's tattooed in my brain about horrible things about the first year. Similarly to media and communications. That's why I think maybe I should have stuck with that 2-year out of media and comms, because by the time I go into my technically third year of college, actually 4.5 years, this wasn't easy for me. I really did what I could do to try to make my life easier in college. I did use resources that were there to help me at times when I was particularly overwhelmed or stressed. But even before second year, I tried to prepare myself by having ideas ready for these studio shows that we did pretty much every week. I had ideas for a short film and just trying to write out stuff so I would have a rough layout of a rundown for a show or a rough script or something. I wanted to have stuff ready to kind of grab and go by the time I made it into second year. And that was something where I knew this stuff that you're doing is kind of busy work. I may not use any of this, but I wanted to have it in case. I really wish I hadn't done any extra work over the summer that I didn't need to do. So by second year, this is where things start to weigh on me. A lot of the group dynamics had changed. I was beginning to take a backseat in the program because, like I say, I didn't really say. During the first year, I was producing a lot of the studio shows, or I produced many of them voluntarily, provided a lot of content, a lot of my music and, my acting and costuming and whatever different things. But as second year rolled in, I started to see that just the politics between students, I needed to start to pull back. But it was a good thing I was already doing that because, by the time I was trying to provide some of the ideas I came up with over the summer, some of the students were very clear with me that they're like, Andrew, I don't want to do your show. Nobody cares about your show. Pretty much to that effect. And it was even common for teachers to say stuff like that. Nobody cares, Andrew, as much as you do about your ideas there. And I'd had teachers that in no ambiguous terms were certainly knocking me down a peg, saying things in front of the class like, after I had tried to do a show that didn't go so well, the teacher basically stood up in front of the class and said, "Should we even talk about Andrew's show?" And I remember I was very stressed. I was very upset and just over the edge. And I remember I just started crying at the end of the class. And I'll never forget that day. There was nobody really that stayed to ask me, are you okay, or what, anything. The teacher, he didn't even make eye contact, just walks by, and most of the students did the same thing. Just walk right past me while I'm there. I was upset because the students chose to do things like talking about comic books for the rest of the year, basically, comic books and sports. And any idea I had to talk about things like mental health, social media, the epidemic of loneliness in society, Black History Month, things that, we're talking about now in the 2020s. But in 2018, no, Andrew, we don't want your show. Shut up, go away, basically was the message. And I got the message very clear. I never forgot it. And I was upset as well because it was said to me by one teacher as well, I'm not naming names here, but one teacher that basically was saying he noticed that I wasn't as, quote, strong as I was in first year. So the stuff I was hearing was, we thought you were stronger. And this idea of he's a weakling, he's not professional as the rest, he's not reliable, he's a piece of work, he's nuts, too much to deal with. That stuff was starting to come up, and I started to pull back. I started to withdraw myself to protect myself, to create a personal boundary between myself, the teachers, and the students. They might think that I didn't see them laughing at me behind my back and stuff like that, but I did. There was definitely evidence of a cutthroat, non-compassionate industry, and the likes of Andrew Johnson just didn't really fit. As I say, everything started to weigh down on me. It was around this time, technically the third semester, things like the yelling by the teachers. I'm not going to name names, but there were a few teachers that yelled to the point that I thought it was a bit much. In a college institution, I don't get the yelling and the way that they would shame and humiliate students. And the yelling kind of hit its peak around the second year where, one of the teachers, he's just like, what the F are you guys doing? What the fuck? Do you even have anything to go to? Do you guys even know what you're doing? And just that kind of, it bothered me. I think other students could, let it roll off. I sort of gave it a pass first year, but by the second year, it was just like, I was just tired of it. I just don't understand why media people feel it's appropriate to yell at folks. And this isn't just something that happened in college. This is an experience I had as well, working on local film sets in the city of Ottawa. One of the first jobs I had, it's this guy coming out and just yelling at me, and I don't understand why you're yelling at me. Unless if you're in the club, you're considered part of their group. They will shame you. They will humiliate you. And I think they do this because they think it's part of the learning. But I would argue that not everybody learns that way, especially not only that you're yelling at students or, your employees, and this is a side that the public doesn't know about TV and movie people, is that behind the scenes, it's chaos. It's total chaos. I was witness to this, and it's one thing for yelling, but if you're going to lay your hand on somebody, that's when it goes too far. And that is not my story to tell. That is something that I had heard about. For the purposes of this video, let me just say, it's not appropriate at any time for a teacher to lay their hand on a student and try to intimidate them. So going to work in an environment like that, it makes it more difficult than it needs to be. Being able to be a part of a movie or a part of a TV show or just editing a video, that's a very enjoyable thing. Making a music video or a documentary, and that's, to me, there's an aspect of it that's sacred. Like the ability to make an album, for me, that's sacred. I just don't think people should really, you can't, mess with that and getting enjoyment out of crushing someone else's dreams. I just think that's a horrible thing. I didn't get why there was enjoyment out of crushing people's spirit. Anyways, you can say to me what I'm saying isn't credible, or it's not a big deal, Here's this guy who comes on and I come on camera and I talk to you about how, my teachers yelled at me. They said things to me that weren't very nice at times. That's not the whole reason I'm doing this video. I'm not just coming on here to tell you about how media professionals yell behind the scenes, and use threatening language and intimidate people to get what they want out of their movie or TV show. I tell you, I don't really get it, because I know when I tried to create a movie set like Disco Drew, I don't remember a bad experience about it, because I worked really hard to make sure, everybody feels good here and we're having fun. And you can see on my YouTube channel, there's a blooper reel and stuff that was genuine, that was real, and we were having fun. And just like the way that I remember, or how I thought movies were supposed to be. But, I saw behind the curtain, so to speak, of the industry, and it's a lot more. Anyways, it's not as it seems. I'll tell you something else that was bugging me by second year. As I said, things were starting to weigh on me, and one of the things that, looking back in retrospect, I think the whole situation, it was not managed properly. Before I get into this, I want to be very clear. Again, this is my opinion, my perspective, part of my experience. I understand legal implications here potentially, so I'm not mentioning names. Part of this I do feel is public information anyway, to an extent, but let me get into that. So let's jump time again. Let's go back in time. Okay, first year when I first arrived at the college, all the students knew the spaces they had access to was the studio where we would film our studio shows, the control room, there's what we call edit suites, and we had about 3 or maybe 2 classrooms in the same floor. The important piece here is the edit suites, that every TV broadcasting student had access to the edit suites. Now, when I went there were maybe 2 or 3 there were 3 rooms that had doors. The other rooms did not have doors. Now, the reason that these suites didn't have doors was because I was told by another student, one of the teachers, a man that's probably, I don't know, maybe he's 55, I don't know, over the age of 55, and one of his students that was 22, they had adult activity in the edit suites. What happened as a result of that was the teacher was put on leave, and the 22-year-old woman was sent home. Then the school responded by removing the doors. In retrospect, I feel like there was a disservice done. It was sort of something that students talked about amongst themselves for a little bit, but it was like you weren't allowed to talk about it. I remember I was told that, and I said, what happened to so what? And it was like, shh, you can't talk about it. And there was no, not that I remember, but like a formal conversation about it by the teachers at all. It was just sort of information that you kind of knew, this is why these doors aren't there. And this teacher is going to be coming back after, I think, 9 months. It's like a 9-month leave. Okay. So every day that I'm a student there, I'm always reminded about this situation and the fact that nobody said anything about it. There was 2 opportunities to do it, around the time when it happened. And then before this teacher that did this act, before he came back, no teacher or industry professional, none of them said, here's what we're going to do to ensure that we're held accountable as an industry, as members of an educational institution. Here's what we're going to do to make sure our students don't experience things like this. There was just nothing about it. And why is that important? Well, this isn't my story to tell, but I would imagine if you're a female taking TV broadcasting, I would assume, maybe I'm wrong, that you might feel a little uncomfortable with the silence on situations like that. And it was my observation that there certainly was comments and things said that to me were on the misogynist side of the conversation. And that I just didn't think it was an environment, a male-dominated environment, that just didn't seem safe for young women. Because first of all, let me just say, okay, you're talking about a 55 or plus, close to 60-year-old man with a 22-year-old young woman. There's a power dynamic there that you could argue, oh, it was, she chose to do what she's doing. Yeah, there's that, but it's also, there's a power imbalance from a teacher deciding to do this in an editing suite that's, well, it's for students, by the way, which it bothered me because just the thought of that activity in a place where you're supposed to work, I hope it was cleaned. I don't know. I have no idea. The point is, the whole thing was mismanaged. And when I reflect on it, I just don't think it was right. There was just something about that whole thing that was missing. And that when this teacher came back, okay, let's get back up to speed here. In the second year, the teacher comes back that was put on leave for having adult activity in the edit suites. Now, this man was not my teacher, but there were quite a few times I walked outside of him teaching in the studio, and I would hear him yelling, and I'm talking yelling. And I had heard this about this teacher, very inappropriate. And so you have this aggressive man that thinks it's okay to do what he's doing with his students and also shout and yell when he comes back. So my thing is, I don't think what was done here was holding him accountable for anything. I'm not stupid enough to think this was the very first time anything like this has ever happened, or that it was the last time. So I don't even know if he still works there. I don't know. I know he was there for a long time. And my point here really is the silence from every teacher, every industry professional. And it's like, wait a minute, you can't say anything about that. I'm not talking about things that are like criminal sexual activity or sexual misconduct. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is inappropriateness in the workplace. And you can't say anything about that. This was a situation to turn into a teachable moment, actually, because you don't have to carry as much trauma into it as some of the other cases that happen in media industries. So it surprised me that nobody really wanted to say anything. And when you inquired about it, you were shut down. Nope, not allowed to talk about it. I don't know. It's like, okay, but you know what? If you'd said something about it at the time, then I probably wouldn't feel like having this discussion at all, because you would have managed it instead of just saying nothing, creating this environment where it's like, so this men in the industry can just get away with whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. Like, I know for a fact it goes deeper than doing something sexually inappropriate in the workplace. But I'm also aware of actual cases of SA. I'm trying to be careful with my language here, but I'm also trying to say it as it is. And the R word that I won't use, and misconduct against minors. These are issues in the media industry. I'll tell you, not once, not one time did I hear anything about it. I know it happens to women. I know it does happen to men too. Children, vulnerable people, marginalized people, racialized groups. You know, this is a problem. For something that you could have said something, you chose to say nothing, and also just completely disregard all this. You know, what about sexual harassment in the industry? I never heard about it once. 3 years that I was there. Looking back in retrospect, does it bother me? Yeah, of course it bothers me. And part of my experience is observing this environment that just doesn't care about the safety of either students trying to learn, their interns, or employees. I think at this point the public is more aware of some of the issues that go on in media. And do I even need to name some of the perpetrators here? I mean, come on. Post-Weinstein, Epstein, and Bill Cosby, R. Kelly. I mean, it just, there's all sorts of names in the industry. I think the public is aware of that, and that something I'm talking about here isn't that out to lunch. And that, I mean, it's crazy in a way that the very first time I step into this environment, it surrounds me. Every day, I say, every day. Why are there no doors there? Because some man couldn't control himself, is why. There's so many students that filmed at that time that you could probably see that there's no doors there. That yes, this was a story that happened. As it translates from the educational system into working out in the field, just the fact that there's no education there at all, there's no safeguards, pretty much next to none. Maybe they have policies, they talk about respect and things like that. But in the industry, is anyone really watching out for the most vulnerable? No. Why is that though? Why is that? Because the industry, unlike other industries, it has opportunity to isolate people. This is the problem. I'm sure there is sexual harassment and things of this nature in, say, healthcare, for example. But if you're working in healthcare, do you really have that much opportunity to be doing stuff like this in the workplace? Probably not, because the public is right there and there's always people there. Say you're studying to be a pilot, and like, is there sexual harassment in airlines? Well, sure. But is there really that same opportunity to be doing this sort of stuff on the job? Media is unique in that we've created this environment, well, just humanity has created this whole environment of, if somebody's shooting a film, shooting a TV show, everyone always thinks, don't bother them. Don't go over there. You'll be in trouble if you go and approach the TV people. They work very hard to make sure that that stays in place. But I also think this idea of don't bother them over there, and the fact that there is access to editing suites to, maybe we're filming in somebody's house and there's access to other rooms, other places where you can go. What I'm trying to say is there's no HR in media. There's nobody that you can really turn to and say, there's stuff going on here that's bothering me, besides other media people that really just want you to shut up. Like, for me saying this stuff now, well, that's why they don't like me. A lot of them don't like me, is because I don't shut up. And that's what they want you to do, is to keep your mouth shut. To me, it just screams danger, because it can be very isolating for people that work there. I mean, all it takes is some Hollywood movie coming to film in Vancouver or Toronto, and they turn whatever into their set, and they think of people like cattle and do whatever they want with the locals. They talk about respect and they have policies. It just doesn't mean they always do it. I guess at this point, it's like, what can we do about it? The fact of the matter is just that you have the tools there to do stuff about it. It's just, what bothered me is that they just didn't do what they should do, even for something that just seems pretty clear of the right stuff to do at the time. And it didn't happen. And this isn't me talking like this is in the 70s or something. This is 2017, 2018. It's not that long ago. That what I'm saying to you is, this is an environment that it does a lot of aesthetics, but the real meaningful work that they need to do behind the scenes, I'm not seeing that. I had mentioned misogyny earlier. That's really not for me to talk about, but I do know it's like, we only had one female teacher. I just think there is a culture there that they need to work on to make it better. Not only was there not many women there teaching, but there was also no teachers of color. There was no Black teacher. There was no Indigenous teacher, no Asian teacher. And this is going to lead into my next point. So the industry, from my experience, as I said, on local film sets, for the years I spent in education, I would say, without a doubt, I'm a guy that has doubting disorder, but I can say this for sure. Algonquin College, where I studied TV broadcasting, certainly in this program, cognitive bias exists. When I'm talking about cognitive bias, it certainly is embedded in the industry. I'm somebody that went into the program. I think it was always in mind to bring in a little bit of culture. I wanted to share who I am. I'm half Jamaican, half white, and I wanted to bring some of my heritage into the program if I could, if I had an opportunity. And, I did cover Black History Month for one of the projects that I did. And, was there any other time that Black history was even mentioned? And it disturbs me. It disappoints me that when I look back, there was a history that was taught about media, where it came from, the origins of it. But from what I could tell, there really was no telling of Black history. There was no Black history through the lens of media, which obviously there is history of Black people in media too. And it's actually, on this note, there wasn't even many mentions of Indigenous history or Indigenous people, really, in this program. At Algonquin College, I saw students that weren't Indigenous covering Indigenous stories, but that was pretty much the extent I heard of Indigenous stories. Or, no Asian, no brown, no nothing, no French even. I don't speak French, unfortunately I don't. I wish I spoke French and Spanish too, actually. I don't, I only speak English. But there was really not a lot of mention about French people either, and how that works with media in Canada, in a multicultural country. And the reason I bring this up is, I mean, obviously, who is here first in terms of Canadian history? We have Indigenous people, and then there was a relationship between Black people and the French. Then the English came. There was predominantly white of European descent. English-speaking people came after. It bothered me at the time, and it's still, upon reflection, it's insane to me, really, that there was really no Black history at all, besides from me as a student doing a story about Black history. And I'll tell you why that's so bothersome in media, because let's think about, where did the camera come from? The camera. Every day in media, out on the field, when I was in the education system, cameras. Every teacher, every producer and director, or even writers to an extent, editors. I mean, there's so much talk about cameras. In this program, we learned all about the exposure and sensitivity and shutter speed and the different settings for the cameras and everything. These teachers that were predominantly white men, cameras, every day. You would think they might know a little more about the origin of the camera. And a little detail that just seemed to escape their mind while they were teaching is how the camera originally was not designed for Black people or even brown people, pretty much anybody that has a little bit of color in them. Now, I think there was a mention of differing skin tones at one point. I overheard that, something about different skin tone, but it was not explicitly said that actually, in fact, the camera was not designed to include Black or brown people. Now, but why is that, though? Because this is another detail that just seems to have escaped their mind. And not that they're bad people. They're not bad people. Just maybe either forgetful or ignorant. The reason for this is that the development of the industry as we know it, Hollywood, the very earliest beginnings of everything that I would later study, was rooted in white supremacy. The KKK, very deeply rooted in the origins of media. So if you're wondering, why is it like that? Well, it was like that because racism, it's very much a part of the story of media. And it's so embedded, so much so, that even if you ask, how did it come to be that sound and picture, moving pictures, were in sync? The process that I'm using right now to talk to you, well, it originated in 1927 on a film that used blackface. Now, I think I heard one teacher say this, but it's like these are things that were sort of casually mentioned, but it's like you can't mention it and then talk about, okay, and why are we not doing that now? Well, because of civil rights and everything like that. It's just the fact that there was little mention of it. Like I say, it bothered me at the time. And it's one of these things I believe the industry needs to work on and take it seriously. You know, what's your problem with Blackness and telling? You're storytellers. Well, tell the story, tell the history, the accurate history. You know, and it's just the bias, the cognitive bias. It went so deep that, you know, there were teachers that seemed to have, these industry professionals, it seemed they didn't like things like night photography. Even sometimes going as far as saying to me, don't photograph Black animals. Just because in their mind, the Blackness sucks everything out of the picture. But in my mind, it's like, but you need the Blackness you need the contrast there as well to make the whole picture. It can't just be light, light, light all the time. You need that contrast. But what I'm saying there is there was such this aversion to just the concept of blackness, of anything and everything. The fact that, like, even I guess that I'm wearing this, I guess that would have bothered them. The fact that, like, I make music videos where it's just me in a black background, and I do that on purpose because I don't have a problem with it. I like it. I'm telling you, to some of these industry professionals, just the concept of it. So here's how things would work in this program, is what I'm alleging here. This isn't an allegation. This is a claim by me. You take it or leave it. But basically what would happen is, say there was a group of black students, and these students, they did wonderful night photography or night shooting of a movie or something. And say there's another group that's a predominantly or all white group that has very high key light or very bright saturated colors in their photography or their film. Now, say these two groups are being graded by this program. So who do you think gets the higher grade? Well, if what I'm saying has any credibility here, they would say the white group did a much better job because, well, there was preferential treatment as well. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I did think there was preferential treatment at times. As well, just the fact that it was a brighter picture gets the higher grade. Now, here's our black group with their night photography. But if I was marking it, if I marked them, I would say, you know what, actually, I like the night photography. I like what you did. Actually, the sound is far superior to the white group, and the story was even better than what the white group did. But that might have been my interpretation. But what I'm saying is there's a bias there that immediately they would rule out the black group. And just, well, black people, that's a separate thing, but black people, but even just their project as a whole in that scenario. As I'm saying, it bothered me, and that media's solution to a lot of this is what I would call, again, aesthetics. They make it look like they did something. They might have their token black reporter or black anchor, and it looks like they did something. What you did is tokenism, is what you did. But you didn't really do anything to address your bias. And you didn't talk about history in the schools as you should have, and why people in the industry are ignorant, because they never learned anything. And you might say to me, well, why is that important to have history in there? Why is that important to how I'm to do my job if I'm just a technical person, whatever? Because you're interacting with the public, media. There's a part of you that's interacting with people. And you're talking about respect. How do you respect anybody without acknowledging that there's a difference? Look, I can't properly show my respect to somebody. Say, if we look at age as a different example, say I need to wheel somebody in a wheelchair that's 90 years old. As well, I need to wheel somebody around that's 35 years old. Well, I need to acknowledge there's a difference in the way I'm treating somebody who's 90 versus somebody who's 30 being wheeled around. Okay, I'm just saying, just as it's not the same thing, but it's just so you understand my point. It's like, I need to acknowledge, I need to recognize the difference. So when I'm talking to so-and-so, I know that information because I've studied it, and I recognize I'm not colorblind. But that's what I feel. The industry is colorblind, and they think they've done everything they need to do about their biases. And I'm here to tell you that's not right. Because when I was in college and when I was in the industry, basically I graduated 5 years ago. Basically everything I've learned is obsolete already, but relatively speaking, that's not that long ago. And me having been on a set a few years ago now, which I'll explain why I'm not on a set right now, or wanting to go back to a set. And I just think that they could do better. They know they can do better, and it does have an effect on, how different groups are doing. And by the way, as well, I'm not stupid. Like, I know, of course, there are groups of white folks that are poor and disadvantaged, white people that deal with things like addictions and mental health issues and all that. Like, I get that. Some of that, in my view, is anecdotal to what I'm talking about. Minority groups, and really the lesser known experience of marginalized communities in Canada, we can do better as a country. And certainly media, which is a extraordinary medium, and it should be treated like as I was talking about earlier, it's almost like it's sacred. It's something, and you shouldn't just treat it like it's nothing. You have to remember that you're talking to people every day, and that your actions does have an effect on somebody else. So this stuff about preferential treatment, tokenism, deciding I'm not going to talk about the history because I don't know why you don't. There needs to be a change. For me, as somebody that I have blackness, my whole time there, I felt what they really want is the rhythm, not the blues. So when black people come in there, people with blackness come in there, oh, you want my song and dance, you want my character work, and you want that stuff, but you don't really want to hear the plight of my ancestry or the stuff that I'm going through, and also just not wanting to have me as part of the club. In my view, more than aesthetics needs to be done. And it's not a prescription. It's not a fix that I'm saying. It is not a solution. But it's doing more than what you did yesterday, is what I'm saying. It's it's just TV people and movie people. They are a special kind of people. You don't know, they say a lot of things, but they don't do really half the things they're saying. And look, race relations is not rocket science. Let me say that again. Race relations is not rocket science. Really healthy people, they talk about race. They know people that are intelligent, they understand some of these differences. And as well, you do see the similarities, but you do have an awareness, you have a heart. Canada has this thing where yes, there is racism in Canada, and it is in media too. And Canada's a very special kind of racism because Canadians do it with a smile. Racism with a smile. It's very nice and polite racism. In a sense, I kind of prefer the way the United States does it because they're just overt with their racism. At least you know what you're dealing with. In Canada, you never know. You could be chilling with somebody for years, 8 years, 10 years, and then finally it clicks and you realize, holy man, this person's racist. This person's ignorant. This person has so many blind spots. But because it's Canada, you don't see it. And I really believe there's a lot more work to be done here, and that there are things you can do, because I know if there is anybody still listening to this, the common criticism about having an anti-racism commitment, well, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything about it. Of course you can do something about it. Well, the point is there really isn't a fix. It's more like a practice that you do in your life to make the world a better place. I know people don't always get it right. I'm somebody that I definitely give people the benefit of the doubt. You can make mistakes with me. But, after a handful of strikes, though, I've had enough. I have to set my boundaries. I think over the years I've had to set personal boundaries with the industry itself, in a sense, because the prevalence of cognitive bias in Canadian media is just astounding. I know you want this video to end. I'm just getting warmed up. I've talked twice now about aesthetics in media as their proposed solution to such issues when it comes to talking about race relations and when it comes to talking about issues that come up in the workplace. I would also say they do the same with LGBTQ plus issues. I would note that there is a lack of LGBTQ plus representation. Because when I went to school, I'll tell you this, and even in the industry, look, when I was in school, there were no trans people in my class at all. Well, not that I was aware of. No non-binary, no lesbians that I remember, maybe bi, polyamorous, and gay. But to tell you the truth, it's not the way that people think of it over social media. People think that the colleges now, it's like, everybody's having a gay orgy in the TV broadcasting program. My experience, I'll tell you this, that it was very heteronormative. It's not like if you were gay or bi or, any number of these things, it's not like you would feel like you weren't safe necessarily, but you didn't necessarily feel like coming forward and being like, hey, there just wasn't a lot of representation. More of the time you would see, it's mostly straight guys that are there, right? Okay, it's mostly straight guys. So when we're doing studio shows or short films or documentaries or whatever, it's guys that come in with their girlfriends and, I don't recall very much of anything about LGBTQ at all. I think there was one documentary that was played when I was in second year. One short film that was made that mentioned or depicted a same-sex couple. But it's like, that's about it. So this nonsense that people are saying, the colleges in Canada or something, I was right there. I didn't see any of that. And what my point is just the college and, again, the media industry could have done a better job of, why was it that you had it so people just don't feel comfortable, really, to be who they are? Because it's not genuine. What the public sees is, the college changes their profile to a rainbow. Bell Media, posted something about CBC, Global News, Rogers, they do something to show that they're whatever, but it's not anything, because behind the scenes, I'm telling you, it's like there just wasn't really any representation of it. Why I think it's like that? I think that people still believe in a lot of myths about LGBTQ+, which has been around for thousands of years. It just, whenever it's convenient for politicians to stir people up, they use LGBTQ+ communities as a political tool. The reality is there's nothing immoral about LGBTQ+. There's nothing about it that's contagious. There's nothing about it that destroys society. Because here's the thing, there's this common idea that it's destroying society or that it's affecting the population in some way. Humans are reaching over 8 billion in population. What do you mean there's something wrong with the population? LGBTQ plus doesn't do anything to the population. It's only less than 10%. Less than 10% of the population can identify as LGBTQ plus. The hysteria and the whole, let's not talk about this, all of it just never made sense to me, because it's just a fact of life, part of life. You're going to see a gay person at some point in your life, probably. You probably will bump into a trans person, or, it's just, you're going to see a same-sex couple. Yes, and I think that it's still like that in media, Because let's think of where did all this phobia, homophobia, transphobia, where did all this hysteria about human sexuality and gender expression, where did it come from? Well, I'll share a little nugget here, which is, I think we have to look at the churches. The churches have been very silent when it comes to the hate against LGBTQ plus persons, well, as well as Black and Indigenous people. It's like, where are the churches? You don't hear them anymore when it comes to some of these issues. Well, what happened was the churches told people thousands of years ago, do not have a same-sex relationship because we want more of our religion to grow, because they falsely believed that anyone of a different sexual orientation, it might affect their religion's ability to grow. That's all that was about. And that was so strong of a message that it permeated throughout all of society, throughout many cultures. I'm saying even in TV broadcasting, it's like they're afraid if I mention gay people, it's going to affect the ability for the company to grow. Like, it doesn't affect the ability for anything to grow. It's just, like I say, it's a part of life. All I can say on this is that I do believe, once again, the educational system, I think they could have done a better job. I think out in media, they just could do a better job. I didn't see the genuine support there. It's just like, again, it's aesthetics. It's trying to fit LGBTQ plus into some neat package, and making it into some kind of a cute commercial that they can present to the public. Well, you know what? It doesn't really work like that, does it? I don't get what's so difficult for media people to just be more accepting about it. It's like, this is something it's like it's been around forever, and it's like you're learning about, like, this is all the first time you've ever heard it. Look, I'm not going to preach to you, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not done yet. I'm still talking about my experience in the education system. This is the stuff I'm saying, what started to weigh down on me, stuff that I observed at the school, when I was out on the field, when I was working in the industry. And this is really the reason I've made this video, is for this next topic. As much as I've talked about the lack of support when it comes to, discussions that's based on sexual harassment issues to do with racism, LGBTQ plus issues, and phobia, but on this next issue, talk about lack of support, lack of compassion. I was really disturbed at really the lack of understanding about mental health. Just to put this into perspective for you and where I'm coming from, this is now 50 years, 2024, 50 years since, and excuse me, this might be triggering for some folks. I'm going to use a word because I don't have any replacement for it, so I'm just going to use the word. It's been 50 years since the very first suicide was broadcast on television in front of thousands of people. A young reporter by the name of Christine in 1974 shot herself on live TV. As time has gone on, I think that people could look at her story differently than 50 years ago. However, to me, media hasn't really changed their view that much. Media personnel, people who work in media, their response at the time was they talked about the story. They worked very quickly to bury the tapes, which was good, understandable, but they worked very hard to certainly make sure it was more a narrative about how Christine was just a sick woman. She was just sick, and they distanced themselves from having any part of it. To this day, it's my opinion, that media responds in a similar way, is to distance themselves from stories of suicide that happen by people in their own industry. Now, I think it's fair, in a sense, to point out that Christine had serious problems. Her own family said it, the people that worked with her said it, she knew it. No one really wanted to say, and I think some of them know they did all they could do. At the same time, I think that there were people that she worked with that maybe to themselves they think, I could have done a little more. Part of the reason she did this awful act was because she was unhappy with her work. I mean, almost similarly to me, she noticed these people don't have any compassion. They're sensationalizing everything. Nobody listens to me. You know, they're saying things behind my back. They don't like me. I think the pressures of the industry drove her to do a very drastic, serious, and horrendous action. That from my analysis, I think her working environment played a part in her death. Now, do I think if she was a truck driver, you know, would she still be with us? I can't say I know that for sure. But I know on that day that she did what she did. Her work, this was something she was talking about for a long time. You know, I don't think the industry, I don't know if they really took her seriously. And just like me, like if I was, the stuff I'm saying, I had a teacher, you know, that told me, you know, Andrew, your anxiety makes you unprofessional. Because I do deal with anxiety and severe depression. But he looked at me and said, you know, that makes you look unprofessional, and how they'd say I'm weak. There really isn't compassion there, and they say things that you could argue maybe in the you know, in the moment, you know, or it's just that's just their own stress or whatever, that's their own thing. But I can't discount that being in an environment where, you know, it's a really high stress and people who just do not understand mental health. As much as I say, look, there was no Black history at all mentioned in this program, there was no psychology either. There just really wasn't enough of a basis of psychology to send workers out dealing with the public. Like it made no sense to me then, in my opinion, just how you're setting up people to really be ignorant working with the public, but also that media cultures don't recognize how that the toxicity and an environment that's extremely stressful. We're talking like 15 hours of a work day, overnights. It's a place where a lot of psychological abuse can occur. And I think that has it leaves a lasting scar. It's always been a mentally taxing industry. It's just in showbiz, you know, people try to hide it. They try to dress it up and make it look like something that it really isn't behind the scenes. It is quite mentally taxing and psychologically distressing. And I even talked about this as far back as probably 2018, maybe. Yeah, I remember bringing to one of my teachers, actually, I printed out basically a fact sheet, you know, the effects of media workplace environment, the effects of this on freelance workers, you know, writers and editors and different people involved in media. I remember I came out with this sheet and showing, you know, increased depression, anxiety in this environment. And my question was, you know, there are boards and committees and different entities in media. Is there any discussion here going on to improve mental health here? And that teacher looked at me like I had 10 heads. Here I come into a class one day with this fact sheet saying, this is a mental health hazard. What are you doing about it? I was thought to be crazy because I even mentioned anything about mental health in the industry. Like, I don't believe really that there really even needs to be, you know, consecutive days working 15 hours and overnights. Things like that, it doesn't even make sense that you have to do that in a media industry, and that for somebody like myself, there were certain opportunities I couldn't take because I was on medication that required me to have to take them at certain times that didn't always line up with these, overnight, and then now we need you during the day, and now so it was really stuff that played with my health. I couldn't do it with as much resources and supports that I have. And I'll talk a bit more actually about, again, working in the field. I'm still kind of in this college area here. But let me just say more about the mental health here, because I think this is serious, and the media industry and even this college, I don't think, they don't take it seriously. And it's not just this college. The stuff I'm talking about, it's colleges in Ontario. Well, never mind colleges of Ontario, colleges across Canada and in film schools. They don't take it seriously. And you know why I know that? Is because during the time I was in college, I remember I left this in my feedback. I think I did. I guess full disclosure. Part of my feedback was, I said I'd heard at least 5 students when I was here, at least 5 students, saying the words, "I want to off myself." Now, sometimes it might have been kind of mentioned as sort of a joke, or maybe blasé. I'm so stressed out right now, I just want to be out of here. And then there were others that I thought were more serious. Now, those people are still alive, but the fact of the matter is that I know the stress levels just seemed out of proportion with what we were doing. Just that there was an environment where there were people saying, "I want to off myself." This is a college program. It's like, maybe I'm sure it does happen in other industries. But I guess what bothers me, what I concern myself with, is that the industry is shown again and again. They show that they don't care. Either, I don't know if it's that they don't know what to do, they don't know what to say, but look, if you have somebody saying to you, "I'm going to do this," I'll tell you, I don't know anybody who said that there wasn't really something there. You know what I mean? I don't know people who go around, maybe there is, people that go around and say, "I'm going to off myself for attention," or I don't know, or that's just, or you would say it's a character defect, a personality defect, whatever. I wouldn't use those words, but maybe that's a possibility from what I've experienced in my life. When people say that, I take it seriously, and I don't think it's something to be blasé about. It's not something to be casual about. So, I was bothered by it then. When I observed media, I just didn't see them taking it seriously. With as much suicide that does happen by people who are involved in media, because it's up there as for a profession. You hear stories about, I think it's dentists that have a high prevalence of suicide. There are other professions that are brutal. You talk about PTSD for veterans and stuff like that. TV is up there for one of these jobs that there's a high likelihood of suicide. I was just, like I was disappointed, and I was disturbed at the lack of just not even mentioning it, not even caring that it was something that was said, when clearly this is an industry that has problems when it comes to this subject. You've had a history here. 50 years ago, as I'm saying, woman shot herself on camera. In part, media had a role to play in her level of stress, the psychological abuse she endured. I really just think that there could be more compassion. When they talk about respect, I think they got to practice what they're saying. There were many times where, again, when it just came to issues of, the shame and humiliation, it has such a negative impact on a person's mental health. I had observed students, that were kind of poking fun or laughing at a student that was having anxiety, having a difficult time, and they were kind of, picking on this student. I remember going up to this person and asking, "What's going on? Are you okay? And I'm sorry that that's happening to you." I really think, I don't want to come on here and tell you everybody in media is mean and horrible. I don't think they're bad people. I think they're ignorant when it comes to some of these very important and serious subjects. That the way that media is structured, the hierarchy of TV, it's set up in a way that really isn't conducive with mental health. I mean, people who work in media, they don't have a pension. And even if you were to say the things I'm saying, there's such a fear of being fired. And that when you lose a job in media, it's not really like you can just go and get another one. If you're fired for some reason and so talks behind the scenes to so-and-so, it's like you're done. In TV and film, it is cutthroat. I don't care what they're saying out in public. If you're listening to different TV shows and they're trying to sell you this point that media is more progressive, I think it has made some improvements, but there's still a lot more work to be done, in my view. Because I think, public attitudes have changed towards media, and, I don't want people to be against media. I believe in freedom of the press, the right to express oneself. I don't condone hate or violence, but the public has started to distrust the media. So, what I'm saying isn't so far-fetched. They don't care about you. I've had them say it to my face. I'm saying, I've met people that work in media. I'm standing in actual TV studios in Ottawa. I've been to the studio at the Bell Media building and the CBC. I was in a control room there. I've been to different places, different festivals and things. I've been around, but what I'm saying is these people working in media make it very clear that they don't care about you. As I said, very clear. "Andrew, we don't care about you." I heard it so many times. "Andrew, we don't care about you." You have to stop a minute and think of how confusing is that for a student or for an intern. And by the way, you're doing something that, you're passionate about, something you're trying to be authentic and genuine in what you're doing. If it's a project you're working on or trying to be the best you can be, but you're also getting this message from teachers. They want to bring this out of you in a sense, but then at the same time, they're going to say, "But I don't care about you, and you're going to do it this way. And if you don't do it this way, you're a lazy, weak, stupid loser." They contradict themselves so many times that it's like, so am I to tell you a personal story or not? Do you care about it or not? Yeah, it defeats itself, the amount of, I don't care. I had one teacher, actually, he was the nicest teacher out of all of them, but he was reading a book called, it was something about, how to not care about anything or whatever, something to that effect. This was just the mantra of the industry is, "I don't care about you, I don't care. One minute they're trying to pry out stuff from you, and then they just take it and tell you "I don't care" and move on really quickly. And I think that it's another level of mental torment. And since they're the ones that are teaching, you doubt yourself. You can doubt yourself about your own humanity because you're just listening to these insiders. They're telling you to be an a-hole, and then I guess you're going to have to be an a-hole. Anyways, there just was no compassion. Again, it's like you can't take a day off or something because, it's like you're fired. Your job is at stake. You're thought to be a weakling if you don't do this. And so it's this type of threatening, almost coercion into doing whatever the people in positions of power are telling you to do. And anyways, it's difficult for somebody like me trying to talk about humanity in the profession, they don't want to hear any of it. And so what I think needs to be done, first of all, on the topic of mental health is where I'm trying to be at the moment. I think there needs to be education. I think they have, again, resources and tools that they can make use of. Well, even like if they were to even just listen to somebody like me about, I don't know, pick one thing, take it and do a better job. Hire somebody to be on the set if you think, you need some psychiatric help on a set. Well, do that. They have consult, make a clear relationship between media and psychologists. Okay, before I need to get off this topic, but I mean, like Bell Media is one in particular that, they had all this Let's Talk, which they canceled, they stopped doing it. Well, and because they weren't really doing what they said they were doing. It's like they throw money at the issue, whatever. Here, call this number if you feel bad. And they have to package a mental health story, of course, in this sick way that producers think of it. It's like you want to get the stories of the cute kids, and you want to make sure we get the celebrity story here and make this look real, like a real hot story about depression. It's like, it's completely insane. It's wrong. They have a weird, twisted way of storytelling, to tell you the truth. My opinion on mental health, there's so much more they need to do to tell the public well-being stories. And they haven't got it yet. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to lose their ability to do anything about it before AI comes in, and then they won't have a job anymore, and they'll have to just sit and think of how much of an a-hole they were and how they just taught everyone else to be more of an a-hole. So addictions, more on the topic of mental health. I'm going to talk about addictions, but in the context of misuse of funds. When I was in college, we had guest speakers, and this one time, this guest speaker came in, and just to make a long story short, she was telling this story about how she was on set, and this actor didn't want to do this photo shoot, and the actor was asking to get drugs, specifically cocaine. And so what they did was they used funding money. That's where all media in Canada comes from, is funded. So pretty much anyone that works in media, they're getting funding money as part of their paycheck. Anyways, but this person said they got this actor cocaine using funding money, and they said they wrote it off as fruit and vegetables. And this person said this very casually in front of the class, which is, so myself, as what I'm 20, 26, 27, whatever, around the age that I'm taking this program. But a lot of these kids, they're still like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And I remember hearing this story. And this is during second year, and I just thought, this is absolutely crazy. It got me thinking, well, what else are they doing? How else are you misusing the funds here? And it started me on this road of, I really got to thinking, and I know that the Canadian Media Fund, I think it's $330 million funding that's available for media in Canada, and the CBC, I think it's funded about $1 billion. Some of the funders are private funders, but a real good portion of this comes from our government, from the Canadian government, goes to media. I'm hearing these stories about taxpayer money going to drugs. And even when I'm working on the set as well, there's so much waste. It's just waste. I can't even tell you how much waste I saw on some of these sets. And I'm just thinking, it's not your money. It really isn't your money. And I believe the Canadian people deserve better than that. Honestly, if we took out, say, I don't know, $100 million from the media fund, or take out $200 million out of the CBC, I don't think the Canadian public would really notice it, to tell you the truth. And by the way, I don't know why they need all this money, because they have all the equipment. They have the same equipment they've had forever. You only need to buy a camera one time. So it's like, how many times what are you buying here? You know, it has to do with obviously paying employees and different things. But it is my thinking that they need to do better at how they're funding money. Because if what I'm saying is true, that you could get maybe 300 million that could be given to people in need rather than media people who teach each other how to be a-holes, I'm thinking I would rather take money out of that pot and I would put it in the pot that's, you know, helping Canadians like living a better quality life. And part of my experience is that I was very much bothered by conversations about money and how it was used. Some cases I didn't think it was appropriately used. I think there needs to be definitely an audit, some more auditing that goes on there. I think the federal government should take out some of that money, because I don't really think they need it, especially when you're bringing in automation and robots. Like, what are you here for? Why are we giving Canadian taxpayer money to executives and producers and people at the top of the hierarchy of television? Like, no. No. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. And I know there will be people that agree with me on that. And if what I'm saying is true, what are we doing here? I'm somebody that I'm very liberal in a lot of my views. And I suppose that, and this view is actually conservative. It's a conservative view, is to take some of that funding out of the media. But I come at it with a different perspective, and it's really not something that I think has to be politicized. I just don't think they need that much money every year. So definitely an audit on that. As well, I forgot to mention, now that I'm on this topic, I think there really needs to be a thorough investigation into media practices in Canada. What I'm saying is such a broad topic, because really it's like there needs to be an investigation into the cases of sexual harassment or abuse in media. That in of itself is a huge investigation. Or if you're trying to do more research in racism, anti-LGBTQ+, well, that's funding money as well to research, to have more information about those experiences. There needs to be more of an investigation into some of these issues. If a safe environment can be provided where, you know, people who work in media or have been exposed to such environments, if they feel they can come forward on anything, any suspicious activity, I think that's important. I think way too often a lot of this stuff exists in the shadows of media. There's a lot of denialism. It's an environment where people compete against each other about who can tolerate more stress, trauma, and abuse. In media lingo, they call it grittiness. I call it bullies in disguise. These dynamics were rubbing off on students. This whole rough and tough attitude when it came to practicing writing, editing, producing camera op, and this kind of stuff, that it just didn't make any sense to me. And as I say, there was a lot of shame and humiliation when it came to doing this work, so much so that you could call it a ritual. It was like a humiliation ritual. I could see how students were becoming careless. I had experiences where, you know, I would do a lot of work into a project, and then I'd have people that I had worked with just not show up for the screening, leave me feeling just kind of embarrassed and like it didn't matter. And when it came time for teachers to deliver their analysis and stuff, they created this environment where, you know, students were laughing. You know, I had quite a few of these of students laughing at me and picking apart things that I was doing. It's one of these things, perhaps you can put up with it if you're not a minority. If you're a straight white guy, you're not really having these experiences, or maybe they don't feel the same thing from it. I don't know, and it makes me question, what is the goal of this program? Why are media courses open to the public? Is media open to more than one group? Sometimes I question, do some of these industry professionals kind of admire things like ethnic cleansing? Because, why not just farm out straight white boys to do work in media? Why did you let me come in? It really rubbed me the wrong way. It's like they're looking for the desirables, a certain personality, a certain profile. Otherwise, it's like you are no good. So I understand this is really strong language that I'm using, but it's like, it's not about that? Then I think that you didn't do your best and you can do better. If it's not all about one group here, then, some of these industry professionals, maybe they would take into account some of what I'm saying. Maybe it's not a bad thing that you have other points of view. Maybe it's not the way you would tell a story, but if other people are paying to be a part of this, they're putting in the work to be in this industry, then why did they not deserve the same respect and dignity? And look here, I'm not doing PR and marketing for media courses in Canada. I'm not doing PR and marketing for media companies here. These are things that they're going to have to reflect on and ask themselves. I know for me, if I say I was a 60-year-old man like some of these industry professionals, and I learned, through watching a video like this, I learned, I really kind of made someone else's life a living hell for no reason. And I would feel terribly. I would feel awful about that. I would want to be reflective and thoughtful. And perhaps, I don't know, if some of them feel they need to make a public statement, maybe not, or they're going to do everything in their power to try to silence me and say how crazy I am. I believe that Canadians need to know what they're buying and what they're consuming, and that, things are not as advertised. And I think I have it in my rights to express myself and to tell the story, to tell my truth, to talk about my experience. Again, I'm not going to say everything about studying media is terrible. I learned a lot there, for better or worse. I really did. Most of the skills that I use now, technical skills, the improvements came out of television. Being around folks that knew something about lighting and camera composition and editing this way to make this thing look more presentable. And I'm grateful for that. At the same time, I think I can have criticisms about media. I consider myself an artist, and I'm of a long line of artists that are critical of media practices. I don't think it's really a surprise or a shock necessarily that I'm coming forward like this, and I'm pointing out some of the things about it that I really feel they could have done a better job. There could have been more humanity involved in media. The reality is that you can have as many technical skills as you like, but you still need to be able to bring humanity into your work. That's something that personally I value. There's a code of conduct, a universal code of conduct, and really an unspoken social contract that humans have with each other. I can say with confidence there were situations that played out where I didn't feel I was treated fairly in the school system, and certainly coming out of it, which I am getting to that, what my life was like post-graduation. Before I move on to more about the industry, I just want to recap some of the areas I've talked about here. I can't say, and no one should expect, that you can fix all of this overnight, or that there really is some kind of a fix here. What I'm talking about are things that need to be practiced. When it comes to something like an anti-racism commitment. What I was talking about specifically is anti-Black racism. This is something where 70%, at least 70% of Black people can talk to you about an experience of racism. And media is no different. And I think there needs to be an acknowledgement, recognition of these issues. Some of the work and reparations that needs to be done, I think some of that money needs to come out of media. There is a debt that is owed marginalized communities, really poor communities, that, media's had a fun ride for a long time here, but, you owe a debt, especially the executives and the producers, the people that are, high on the chain there. I think they really need to consider giving back in a very meaningful way to people that I think have been harmed by media over decades. As I said, as a start, education about Black history is something that needs to be implemented into media programs in a way that really makes sense. Just can you even mention, like, as I say, as the example of blackface? This is something that an awful practice that was continued well up to the 80s. There's a lot of photographic evidence, and there are many recent examples as well of use of blackface in media. To say you don't really understand how that affects people, how that harms people, I think you need to look within yourself and take a look at that. I don't think in my lifetime I'm not going to see a world where there's zero racism. There is going to be racism as long as I live. I was born into a world that has racism, and it still is quite something to me that there's just no leadership. There's no ethical or moral leadership here. And the issue of blackface is very kind of unique or more prevalent in media because, I don't know, in showbiz and entertainment, there's a long history of folks thinking this is acceptable behavior. And it really is about time. Folks learning about it need to overcome whatever uncomfortability they have about it, and why we don't do these things, and some of the practical steps we're doing to not have these things. I didn't hear any of it when I was studying media. Just personally, I just think it's wrong. I understand it's not like I expect everybody to be a saint, but come on. It's just that there's no way around it. Any way you roll the dice here, there is racism that exists in showbiz, in the entertainment industry, in media industries. There's really bare bones facts, like how really across North America, Black people only own 2% of businesses. You can try and come up with all these weird mental gymnastics about how systemic racism isn't there, but we're never going to get anywhere with race relations without an education. I don't really know how else some of these things are going to be overcome, or finding a way to a more peaceful environment, a more just and fair workplace. I'll leave that for now. I had also talked about really the prevalence of sexual inappropriateness, as well cases of sexual misconduct and sexual harassment that exists in media. And this is another area that I think there needs to be more conversation about it, as well as there needs to be some open investigations into media companies in Canada. I don't know why in Canada we think that, we're really no different from stuff that's going on in the United States. In some ways you can argue, there's less crime here, nice and polite, whatever. Why do we think that there's nothing like that in Canada that needs more people, whomever you are, whatever walk of life you come from, you need to step forward. And that's the world we're living in now. As I say that, I can also have a nuanced discussion where I realize, okay, I'm not a monster, okay? So I don't want people making false allegations if there's nothing that's there. But can we take seriously the stuff that is there and it needs to be dealt with by the appropriate figures of authority. What more do I really need to say? I think Canadians in general see some of the issues there. In the school system, they need to take it more seriously. You know, it's the same thing I think about mental health. I just don't really think establishment, traditional media can really survive without a sense of values and morals and ethics, especially now in a world of algorithms and automation and artificial intelligence. If you're not somebody that is trying to even look at, how can I do better? How can I create a better world here? It's just, I don't see how the toxicity in the culture can really carry on. It's always going to be there, but the media we see today, it just really has very little concept of well-being. It just doesn't seem to know how to think anything about well-being. It doesn't know how to make a healthy workplace. It doesn't know how to write a well-being story. So much of the media we see, of course, it's very negative. It just comes out of the environment that creates it. They are very aggressive people. Probably most of the people in media you would never want to have lunch with. None of them. I mean, we celebrate them all day long. People that you see, the highest earning celebrities or whatever, you wouldn't really like any of these people. A lot of it is a front. And from what I've seen, behind the scenes is it's just a lot of chaos and turmoil and a lot of people getting hurt in terms of psychiatric injuries. So a lot of this type of work is not fun. Probably 10% of it is fun. And I would say in a similar way with social media as well, which is a different topic that I will not get into for today. It's all cut from the same cloth. I think a lot of this really struck me by the third semester and fourth semester, where I really saw that they don't care really about your skills or qualifications. This is a popularity contest. It's about your personality and your profile and how you look. And I'm somebody of an atypical personality, and I deal with things that I think are not really the common experience, and I just really didn't fit in. As graduation was approaching in 2019, I knew that. However, I really worked hard to try to land a job in the industry. I had done some internships. It was a very stressful time, honestly, in between that and completing assignments and everything else, just general life stuff. I had this feeling that, I may not actually get in here, even though at that time I wasn't talking like this. Of course, now it's probably going to be even difficult or more difficult for me now, but it's like, I'm sorry for telling the truth. If any of these people are going to try to harass me or intimidate me or threaten me, I'm as prepared as I can be in such an event. The worst they're going to do is just not listen to me or delete me from social media. Like they're going to, just distance themselves, okay, delete this one off of LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. And, it's like at this point, my own integrity, my own ability to share insights and be an honest person is more important to me than trying to look a certain way over social media or to the industry. So as graduation approached, I really was working hard to, sending out applications and sending off emails to different media companies, film companies, really doing the work and believing what a lot of the teachers had told me about how skilled I am, how talented and this, and found that I was having a very difficult time getting into the industry. I'd already felt sidelined anyway, but I could see it happening just as I was trying to send off applications and such, that other students were not having that problem. I can sit here and theorize all day about what was really happening there for me. I sometimes get into a bit of a train of thought that I've had to pull myself out of, which is really a question of, was there purposeful intent by anybody, by teachers or the students or graduates now, was there purposeful intent to keep me out? I can't answer that question. I know that there were students who had conversations where they had said, hey, if so-and-so tries to get in, I'm going to do everything possible to tell everyone, don't let that person get in. Don't let that person have a job. And they can do that because this is a small industry, really, especially in the city of Ottawa. I had a hunch, and it's only a suspicion, that because students had expressed this, because I know teachers talk behind the scenes and gossip and share information and stuff, they do have an ability to do this. I think in every industry, your lifeline, it really is your call or people you studied with. And I knew that a lot of the people I had gone to college with, basically they got out of me what they needed. They don't need this Andrew Johnson anymore, who did characters and I sang a song for you and I helped you with your projects, and they were off to bigger and better stuff. They didn't have to respond to my messages. None of the students, which basically I haven't talked to any of them since graduation, and none of them during the pandemic. I haven't talked to any of these people in like 5 years, except for, a few of them that, well, I guess a handful of them that watch me like I'm in a fishbowl over social media. They'll watch my stories. They might like some of my things I post on social media. They won't really talk to me though. And I get that there's no collaboration, really. Collaboration is rare in Ottawa. It became more competitive. This was combat after graduation. There wasn't really, I'm here to help you anymore. It was, I need this job to survive and, forget you. So it's really an interesting question because I have talked about how I felt there was a discriminatory practice against me trying to get into the local media industry. And it's really something that's difficult to prove. People don't like me saying that because they think, oh, he's trying to victimize himself. He's looking for sympathy. I don't know what else you call it. I have no idea. And that I am suspicious, have been for a long time, that there was an intention on the part of teachers and graduates to not help me get work because they didn't like me. And that's what it's really about in the end. It doesn't matter about if I'm qualified or not. It's just that when you're in media, it's really not like I'm applying for McDonald's or I'm applying for Starbucks or something. It's not really like that. In media, those are positions that there certainly is more responsibility on the person to look like you can fill the part. I can show people in media that I can fit the part so many ways, but in the end, media people choose you. I learned the hard way. I don't really choose media as much as that I'm interested in it. I'm passionate about it. This is a part of me and my history of being a creative person and writing and editing and everything that I do. But I cannot force the media to try to give me a job. It's just if they like you, if they want you, then they'll give you the opportunity. It really is about who you know at the end. And I realize that I'm just not what they were looking for. The industry is not looking for Andrew Johnson. And that was a very hard pill to swallow. Even long after graduation, I kept trying to get jobs. I went to employment specialists, and I've had so many people looking at my resume that it's just that wasn't the problem. It's just that I knew I couldn't get my foot in, only to a point. So I did work in local film sets as a production assistant on a few sets. There was one film that I worked on. It was one of these Hallmark Lifetime films that often a company in Ottawa that I won't mention has this mentality of making movies like McDonald's makes hamburgers. And so they do these things really quickly, and they have people working through all hours of the night and stuff. And I suppose that's within labor laws in Canada. I guess media is exempt. I don't really quite understand all of it, to tell you the truth. I remember this one. I was working with this lady in the catering department, really. It was preparing like sandwiches and stuff for actors. And I mean, you can imagine how I kind of feel about that as somebody that, well, I can act. I do like performing and all of that, and I'm serving sandwiches to actors. But I remember observing how, I don't know if it was other production assistants and crew, just the way they talked to this woman was so horrible. I never forgot it. Just being there trying to help her and just to let her know, as a local person, giving up her time to be a part of this production, that you were doing a good job. But they were really talking down to her, and I didn't like seeing that. Basically, by the end of it, she texted me and she said, I'm never working on a film set again. And I understood it. And she also shared with me, she was dealing with something with her family at the time, and that she said to me she was diagnosed with cancer. You can argue with me about the truth of the story or whatever, but I felt she was telling the truth. I felt she was genuine, and the fact that these film people were so mean to somebody that was just diagnosed with cancer, that tore me up inside. It's like there's only so much that, I can turn a blind eye to. I'd had an accumulation of these kinds of experiences of just witnessing this sort of almost barbaric behavior. And it's in making a movie. I just thought it was terrible. I mean, basically forcing somebody out of a job to make somebody that's trying to help you feel like, I never want to be a part of this. I really listened to her with compassion. I hope that I was helpful at that time. I had been on these sets with experiences like that, of witnessing people being talked down to in between these shoots and stuff. And I found that, after I would work on these sets, it seemed like they just didn't want to pay me as well. It's like they don't want to pay you. I could do hours of work for them, but it's sort of like they pick and chose who they wanted to give payment to, the funding money to. And so that kind of thing made me feel very iffy about this, like this feels kind of shady to me. Like I'm just out of college and I'm trying to do the best here, and you guys don't even want to pay me, do you? So that was hard. And just to have that push and pull with them, it's like, what do you mean you don't want to pay me? Like, you want to pay everybody else, but not me. Why? What did I do? I did my job, and I did what you told me to do. These were folks that I really just felt they were shady, to tell you the truth, and I'd seen on these sets, policemen show up, and it was for crew that was working on the film. I witnessed a fight break out one time. I did. And people showing up to the set high on drugs. I'd said there's this whole culture in media as well it's drinking, it's drugs. It's very unhealthy. And at times, I'm like, is this really worth it? Is it really worth it to kind of put myself in danger with people who don't care about anything, apparently? So it wasn't a nice experience. Completely opposite to what I grew up with, thinking that a film set was a lovely place to work. Well, oh my goodness, was I ever proven wrong? I was completely disillusioned when I had these types of experiences. And to know that by the end of it, what really sealed the deal here in my decisions of whether or not I would go back to a film set. Not only did I end up getting these jobs of, or being given the task of making sandwiches and stuff like that, but I ended up just washing dishes. The last film I was working on, I was washing dishes, and it sort of felt to me like, I'm not going to get out of this, am I? They think of me as a janitor, don't they? Well, you have to think of where my mind was at the time, that many months down the road after graduation, I had witnessed other graduates they're getting assistant director jobs and stuff at CBC. They're getting editing jobs at Bell Media. Some of them are moving on up the chain, but I'm still here washing dishes. I see that this is a barrier for me, and I'm not sure how the heck I can get out of this. I did all this studying to just, well, why don't I just go and get a dishwashing job? I mean, or just get a job at Starbucks, I guess, at this point. Like, in the context of the experiences I've shared here, I just didn't know how much more this was worth it, and to put myself through all that stress as somebody, again, that I take medication. I just can't always be doing this type of work at all hours of the morning, and being treated in such a way that really is not good for me. After a lot of the stuff I've dealt with in my life, this was, it's like you might as well just hold a gun to my head. I know that that's a very strong statement, but it was getting to a point where it felt like that. Why am I putting my life at risk for these types of jobs? It was also a thing where it was it could be a very intimidating environment. So, just fresh out of college, you're trying to learn how different companies or different workers work. So you might want to ask somebody a question. Well, that might have been the worst thing you could do, because it's like we live in an age where it's like, well, just Google it. Some of these workers would apparently withhold information, and they would sort of just kind of want to let you fumble around a little bit instead of just answering your question. They would rather you experience humiliation and shame on the job than just try to help you or give you a little direction in what they're asking you to do. And it's not rocket science, of course. I'm just saying that you really didn't feel like you could ask anybody anything. Like I say, it was just a very intimidating environment. Threatening in some cases. This type of atmosphere really was indistinguishable from a lot of the experiences I had in the education system. Really, for the years that I was in college and getting into the industry, very much the same, in my opinion, and that I had to be real with myself as somebody that deals with mental illness, a person living with mental illness. I need to be really honest with myself. This is not a healthy environment. I don't think it's healthy for anybody, really. I think there are companies and there are sets and workplaces there in media that really need to be looked at by a third party or something to improve some of these environments. What I went through just didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense for me to be on a set. And in a lot of these environments, like even during college when we were doing remote broadcasting, covering different sporting events and weightlifting championships and things, that it's like, I don't belong here at all. It didn't look like me. It didn't sound like me. I was able to do it. It just, at the end of the day, even some of the festivals that I was involved in, it's just that it seemed it wasn't really a safe place for me. I'm sure there are people that maybe they work in the industry, they could watch me now and they think I'm just whining and complaining. He's just bitter because he didn't get a job right away out of college, or he just didn't, whatever. And they're entitled to their opinions. And as well, I have the right to express myself, and I can talk about my experiences. I wish that it didn't go this way. I could have done without the adult bullying and the yelling and laughing and snickering and talking behind my back, these sort of petty games, and showing that you're hanging out and gathered with people from the industry, but we're not going to invite this guy or the others that are considered not valuable or worthy of being in the club. After a certain point, it's like, you can keep your dirty money. Have your dirty money. I don't want it. A lot of these folks, I'm not somebody that's a schmoozer. I don't have to be a part of it. And it doesn't have to mean that I'm a failure because I didn't really get into the area I studied. I think that some of these folks, it doesn't really mean anything to me now, but I'm sure they have people they need to apologize to or make amends with. I think some of them need to be held accountable for their awful behavior. A lot of them need courses in diversity and sensitivity. A lot of them need to look into ethics, morals, values, code of conduct. They need to think about people before profit. It's so ironic that in a people business, they really don't know how to talk to people or deal with people. And I guess I live on another planet from them. It's when you talk to people in media, it's like you are talking to people in another reality. They just want to kind of sit and observe the world, and they think they have no effect whatsoever on people that they're dealing with. Everyone becomes disposable to them. I think it's really important for somebody like myself, people like me, to share their experiences in education, share their experiences in the industry, in an authentic way, in a genuine way. I'm just going to be very transparent. I know it didn't work out for me. I've been through this before in my life. Acting didn't really work out as much as I love it. Did I tell you that even after TV broadcasting, I tried to get in contact with acting agencies? None of them were interested in me. I was not experienced enough through their eyes. Even music hasn't really worked out the way I wanted. The stuff in TV, it is difficult for me. What did I really get out of this in the end? Is a YouTube channel with content that you can look back and see that I had studied TV. It's like, I don't know, some days I really still question, what was it all for? Was it worth it for me to get into this? Or even some days I also question the whole social media thing as well. What am I really getting out of this? I'm the guy that quite clearly, most things that I love and am passionate about just don't always seem to work out. I guess that's the great irony of my life. What was the point in me doing all that work for pretty much nothing to show for it? I knew going into it that it was going to be tough. I knew that. I think it's amazing I lasted as long as I did, and I'm not closing my mind to opportunity if it comes up. Probably less likely now that I've been talking like this. I think I prefer to do a lot more independent work. I don't think I'm going to be somebody that's working 30 to 40 years at the CBC or Bell Media or Rogers or Global or something, then actually getting a reasonable job out of it. Because most people in media, they don't have a pension, they don't have steady work, and all you have to do is really breathe the wrong way. All you have to do is have your hair turn gray and they'll fire you. I think that I'm not really that crazy sounding here, that I'm not that interested in it, and that I think the public as well has kind of lost its trust and respect for media. These are folks that their ego is so high that they think they own media. You didn't invent television or film. You just happen to play a part in this. Media doesn't really belong to anybody. This is communications, really, at the end of the day. I could have done without the stuff to do with the racism, the homophobia, the transphobia, misogyny, xenophobia, discrimination against persons living with mental illness, and on it goes. It's just that the negatives certainly, in my case, outweighed the positives in the experience of media. And some days I do regret that I was a part of it at all, and that I thought I could do anything to change it. It's not going to change. I hope that at the very least, I don't know, there's somebody that can get something out of my story here. I'm a survivor. I don't give up. I keep going. I'm very strong, stronger than I think most people realize, even what I realize. I endured a lot, and I will see this through the other side. The real question here, as I start to close out this video, is really, can I forgive them? Can I forgive the teachers, the industry professionals, my former colleagues? Can I forgive them? And the answer to that is yes. I wish peace to them. I wish them no harm. I would like to move on in my life. I would like to do better in my life. I have a lot of things I would like to get to for as long as I have on this earth. I want to make it very clear that I am looking forward. I have plans for the future. So in case anything happens to me for revealing so much information, just know that I didn't do any harm to myself. It's more likely that somebody's going to be upset with me, and that's why something terrible would happen to me, because I have a lot of life to live. And if any of them do watch this, you have a right to be frustrated with me. You can feel sad or however you need to feel. I've done a lot of deep processing, I went through a lot of grief, a lot of therapy, a lot of medication and therapy. Because to tell you the truth, I think that what I studied, it really had a negative impact on my mental health. And there came a time where, I've talked about it on my channel before, how there was a period of time in recent memory that my loved ones weren't sure if I was going to be around. Because my mental health was just really in a terrible, terrible place. And I do think that, in a way, the toxicity I was exposed to, that I went into voluntarily, I think, though, it really was not good for me. And I've needed a lot of help, a lot of therapy and medication. But I think that I've been able to come out the other side. I've been able to, I think, create boundaries between myself and media and the people that are in it, that, I say again, they're not bad people. I think they're very ignorant, but I think it's safe to say I need to protect myself from their ignorance. I just don't think it's healthy for me to be around, and that, really for years anyways, they didn't want me around. It was quite clear that I wasn't wanted there. The only way I would do anything for TV or film, if I was assured that the conditions were going to be healthy for me, I might consider giving my skills and talents to a project. For the most part, I think I've really been trying to move away from a lot of stuff to do with media and keep the pieces of it that I enjoy alive in my heart. I want to continue making videos because it's something I enjoy doing. Like I say, I've been doing it since I was in middle school. I've been doing this kind of stuff forever, it feels like. And my music, I want to keep doing that, but that's for me. And in some ways, I do it in defiance of people that didn't treat me well. And that's not just media people, but in some ways it's like I'm surviving out of spite. And sometimes that's a great motivator, I'm not gonna lie. That's, of all the terrible things I experienced, and I have not shared all of it. What I've talked about here is just scratching the surface. I feel I'm probably going to take some heat for this, probably, but I do maintain that there probably does need to be some investigations into media practices in Canada. And I guess I'll close with this. So, I mean, if some of these guys want to come after me about stuff I'm saying, I'll just have to say to them that, well, you showed me for years. You showed to me for years and years. You know, here's a guy I'm just trying to do my best. I'm giving my talents away and my skills and stuff, and I'm trying to be thoughtful about stories I'm telling and different things. And it's like, you guys for years have shown me that you don't care. You don't care. Then why should I care? You know, to be quite frank, my dear, I don't give a damn.